so if we can go ahead and start. I thought it might be good to do introductions. I'm not sure everybody knows everybody at the table. So I'm Ashley McGinnis. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Academic Services.
And I'm Gabe Edgar, Superintendent of Schools.
Dawn Baker, Board Secretary.
Kendra Lau, Director of Assessment.
Carrie Anderson, Assistant Director of Special Programs.
Mark Carell, I'm Principal Bodie.
Kim Miller, Board Member.
Carol Burns, Community Volunteer.
I'm Latanya Williams. I am the Vice President of the school board.
President of the Board of Education, Dave Foster.
Stacia Studer, Director of Curriculum Instruction.
Nancy Gregory, the Community Citizen.
I'm Landy Quinlan, I'm the Principal at Truman Middle School.
Eileen Houston Stewart, Director of Communications.
Lara Gilpin, Director of Secondary Ed.
Bethany Clark, Director of Elementary Ed.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here. So I'm not certain how this structure worked in the past, but I've asked everyone from our academic services team to join us, and that way, if they have more expertise in a particular area, they can chime in. Depending on the topic for discussion, I may invite some building leaders. So today I've invited Mark Carell and Landy Quinlan from middle schools, because we're going to be talking about middle school teaming and data teams. And so I kind of wanted to have their input on those topics. So more heads are better than one. Just so everyone knows, I do have a 10 o'clock Zoom meeting. So we'll try to start on time, end on time. So let's go ahead and get into it with middle school teaming. So just for a little bit of history, I was a teacher at Truman and we had middle school teaming, and I thought it was very successful. In 2018, we had some pretty significant budget cuts, and teachers were cut, and teaming was put to the wayside, pretty non-existent. So teaming looks like, at Truman, we taught 5 out of 7 periods. It could be 6 out of 8 periods, and I believe Rubidoux ran 6 out of 8, correct, Mark?
Yep.
So what that looks like is you have an interdisciplinary team. You'll have reading, writing, social studies, math, and science teachers all on one team. They are housed in one specific area of the school, kind of all together, okay? On that team planning time, that 1 hour, every day is scripted. So Mondays, for example, may have been a data day, and that would be a day where maybe we're going to go over a common assessment and see what items did our kids miss, what things did they do well. We would chart all of that data, so that was in my classroom. You could see my first hour, second hour, fourth hour, fifth hour, seventh hour, and kids could see, gosh, I got 68% on two-step equations, but that's not as bad as the 50% class average for fourth hour. So kids really were able to see how well they were doing and how they compared to their peers. And so with that, as a teacher, we were able to set individual student goals. This was effective in moving kids academically. And so I think it would do us a disservice to not discuss what middle school teaming looks like, because my grand vision ideally would be to bring that back at the secondary level, focusing on middle school first, and then also having instructional coaches to support that work. Right now we have curriculum advisors that Mrs. Studer supervises, and that's been effective, but I think we can use them in a more intentional way and focus on academic achievement. Going back to that scripted time, so not only did we focus on academics and data, there may be a day, let's say on Tuesday, the team met, and we had a challenging student. We could pull that team together and pull the kiddo in, take them out of specials, and really have a heart-to-heart conversation with that kid. Sometimes we would call home as a team and touch base with the parent. And really, it just created that relationship with the kid. We kind of said, hey, here's what you're doing really well, and here's where we need some help. And we need, a plan for success. I think teaming worked. Academically, behaviorally, it created a positive community of learners. And so I would love to see us get back to that, but I don't want you to just take it from me. I would love to have Mark or Landy chime in with their experience of teaming. I had that as a teacher at Truman and it was effective. I had a great learning experience with that, but I can tell you the instructional coach was also in that planning time and they supported that work. It was less of an authority figure, but more of a I'll roll up my sleeves and I'll be at the table with you to do that work. The instructional coach would help me grade papers, would help me chart our data charts for my classroom. And so I'd love to see how that operated at the other two buildings because I think that's key to moving our kids academically.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right.
I know you've done it a lot longer than I did.
Okay,
but-
so when I was a teacher at Rubidoux, it was a model of teach 6 sections, and there were 8 total during the day. One of those was a legitimate plan time. You had your planning every single day, uninterrupted. Currently now with the model of teach 6 out of 7, one of those days, at least monthly, is reserved for job embedded training. So teachers don't get their full plan time every single day. And then another one of those times is meant for the department to plan currently. So 2 of the 2 days per month, a classroom teacher does not get a plan time. I'm just going to give you my opinion before I go any further. I think this is one easy way to increase the recruitment and retention within our district. I think this will be highly beneficial. But the way the model worked, 6 out of 8, teach 6 out of 8. One was guaranteed plan every single day. That was uninterrupted. The next one day was reserved for job embedded. One day was reserved for data teaming. One day was reserved for pulling in these STAR students, and really the entire, I was on the 8th grade team, the entire 8th grade team would just tell this individual on how great of a job they are doing. Even if this student didn't have specific teachers, they still would say, I've seen you in the hallway, I hear your name all the time, and just really promote how great of a job that they're doing. The other individual or individuals that we pull in is somebody who needs some type of intervention. Just like Dr. McGinnis said, it wouldn't be a negative intervention, it would be how can we support you? We found a lot of students that we were bringing in had attendance issues, and we would just figure out, why are you always late to school, or why are you missing the bus? And many times we found out their parents are working. They go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. They don't have an alarm clock. They miss the bus. Then they can't come to school. So there were several students that we went to Walmart and bought them a $5 alarm clock to get them to school. Or suggested, do you have a cell phone? We found some said, yeah, I have a cell phone, but I don't have a charger. So we would find them with just these simple things that we want to blame the parents all the time and blame the students. They're not coming to school because they don't care. Sometimes it's the simple, they don't have the means. One of them said, my mom can't get me a charger until 3 weeks from now because she didn't get paid. So we got the student a charger. Pulling these students in and figuring out how can we assist you? How can we help you? And then another one of those days was designed for a second planning time. So one day a week, you get 2 days to plan or grade or to get things caught up. I truly believe it'll be a benefit to our teachers when it comes to recruitment and retention.
We did a process much the same as far as using it for an intervention period for students, both good and kids we were concerned about. We used it also as a time to bring parents in, and sometimes you had an intervention with the parents sitting at the table and we all came up with solutions. It was a great time to have all of the parents at the table, all of the teachers at the table with the parent. We found that when one teacher continuously called a parent, then it caused a negative relationship with the parent. When the teacher sat around the table with the parent and said, how can we help you? Let's come up with some ideas we can do. at home as well as at school, it really changed behaviors. That's when we got to change behaviors. I agree with what Mark is saying about retention of teachers. I also want to say that as far as the academic focus that we're taking in our district right now with visible learning and clarity, we know, research has shown, that it moves our kids forward. The thing that it takes from our teachers is time. The teachers are sold on the processes. They love the idea of getting the kids, making individual goals for students, showing them the data, putting charts on the wall, coming up with student examples so that students can see where they're at compared to where the standard is. But it does take a lot of time. And it's taking time right now from our teachers after school. We have numerous teachers that are staying after school until 4:30, 5 o'clock, sometimes working through how they can put the data together and best display it for the students, reworking all of their lessons so that the kids have that clarity that we're looking for, because we know it works. The research has shown it works. I think by giving the teachers this time to get together and create those items for students, you're going to see a lot more fidelity with the process. We know that when we put something in place, like an academic intervention, that it only works as long as the teachers do it with fidelity. And the one thing that falls through the cracks, or the biggest complaint from adults, is that there's just not time to do it with fidelity. And I think that this brings back that time. I think now is the perfect time to do it, because we're giving them this process, we're showing them that it works, and now we're gonna say, not only do we want you to do this, but we value you enough to give you the time to do it, and do it right. And so I think that there's no better time to bring that back in the district.
Thanks for sharing, Landy. Dr. Gilpin was at Spring Garden. You guys also had teaming there.
I did.
If you want to chime in from your lens.
Yeah, there's great value in it. I think though you have to really decide really what components of the middle level, if we're going to middle school models, because there's a lot more than just teaming that's involved in that. We were fortunate there that we were able to alternate days of actual department and then team, which allowed you the collaboration time with your like content, which I think is the important time of really the PLC model and the data teaming concept within the like content. And then on the flip side, the core teacher side was more about the relationship and progress monitoring and support of students. You have to be strategic in the model. The other piece to it is if you're really slick, I guess, you can design a related arts block of time and a core block of time, and that's really opens the door because you're now creating the minutes that our students need. So some might need 90 minutes of ELA versus somebody that might only need 45 minutes, and somebody might need 60 minutes of math. And so as a core team of teachers, you're designing the minutes for those kids. That's a whole nother layer, a whole nother stuff, but we can talk about middle school for a long time. So
We weren't that slick at Truman to be that specific on the minutes, but I have heard that with the.
you just have to
higher
decide
level
it,
teaming.
yeah. It just changes the look of it and really is individualized for each kid.
I think there's so much value in us discussing this and hopefully moving forward with teaming at the middle school level. Right now, with teachers only having one plan time, I think it's an unrealistic expectation that they would be able to do this work in addition to planning their daily lessons. So at this time, I would take any questions that you may have.
How many staff members would we have to add?
That's a good question. That would be different from school to school.
So when we lost it, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Okay.
You're good.
When we lost teaming at the middle school in 2018, we were forced to cut 5 staff members at that time. And And
That was
so,
just at one school, or what?
yeah,
Which
that
school
was-
was this?
Truman.
Okay.
So if you take that times 4, you're looking at about 20.
But depending on how many students are in a building, you know, it's gonna be different depending on the number of students in the building. The reason it was 5 at Truman is because we cut an entire team. And so when you cut an entire team, you're cutting 1 social studies, 1 science, 1 reading, 1 writing, and 1 math. And so we reduced 1 entire team because we were able to take back the teachers during that plan time. Class sizes increased at that time. Yes.
To do the teams, would you guys have to change the middle school model to like a uniform model?
What do you mean by that?
Well, a couple of his schools are 2 grades and other grades. Schools are 3 grades. Is there like a difference?
I sure hope that issue gets addressed sooner rather than later, but you could still run a team with 6th grade and then another building with 7th grade.
You're gonna look at your enrollment numbers, and then you ideally, depends on how many core you're running, but you have about 125 to a team per kid, like per team, so that's what you have to look at. And in our situation with 6, 7, 8, you're probably gonna have to run a couple split teams on each side. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Can you explain, like, split the teams at 2 different schools? Is that what you're meaning? Or,
So, like at, let me give you Spring Garden for an example. You're gonna have to run a split, probably 6, 7 team.
Oh.
So some of the folks are gonna have to run both and then
With the
split
grades.
7, 8, yeah. Because you're probably
is
gonna
that
have,
ideal to do that?
no, not perfect,
Okay.
but it's.
So we run it currently at
Yep,
Truman.
you'll run a split.
So we have a 3-team
Usually
system
they're-
where 1 team runs half the day they spend teaching 7th grade classes and half the day they teach 8th grade classes.
Ideally at Bodie and Truman, just with their current numbers, you'd like 2 teams at 7, 2 teams at 8 would be a perfect world.
Exactly. Yeah, if we're gonna do
Yeah,
it,
a perfect world, yeah.
it's my opinion, if we are gonna do this, let's do this ideally perfect over just getting by.
You know, the issue that we run into from a 6 through 8 model, which I think is something that has been talked about, you know, for the last 18 months for sure, is that the facilities drive into the question. You would probably have to look at building another middle school in order to get to that point. Because right now, it's not possible for you to go 6-8 in the buildings that aren't 6-8. There's just nowhere to go, unless you build onto them. So the facilities become a discussion. We just don't have the facilities to.
We can make this decision, to address that, correct? I mean, we.
Sure, yeah, this decision,
Yeah,
as they just mentioned, will work either way.
yeah.
And one thing that I would tell you from a financial standpoint, because in the back of everybody's mind, they say 20 staff members, okay, that triggers a pretty good number, right? Well, if you remember in ESSER $3, we had to use 20% dollars had to go towards fixing the educational process. With that being said, we have a lot of dollars that are probably going to become open right now because we could not fill all the attendance interventionists, we could not fill all the social workers. So we have some money built in that would help us in 23-24 get this done. Now, is it sustained over the years? No. But to get it started, you know, it probably would be a free process to see whether it works, you know, as a pilot, however you want to look at it. And I would also tell you that from a financial standpoint, you're in a better shape than you have been in a long time. And assessed valuation went up 4.3% again this year. And so we do have dollars there in order to fix this problem. And so the board just has to identify whether it is a problem that they want to go with or not. And it's an issue, there's no doubt. So anyway, from a financial standpoint, I think we're okay. Right? If we had this discussion 2.5 years ago, I would have told you that it probably wasn't feasible. But I'm not in that position, no, I'm kidding. We're gonna be okay.
I would love us to go this route and bring back middle school teaming. I think it's very student-centered. And I think teachers would find relief that they would have the time dedicated to really truly care about their kids and analyze the data and take time to get to build relationships with them. And I think we'd see academic achievement success as well
So we would start this next year.
next year.
The other piece to it is when they transition to the middle level, they're typically in a contained setting for somewhat in the elementary, and then they bounce to a 7-period day, 50 minutes just moving, and this is just really it's an advocacy for them, so we don't lose them in the shuffle probably, and that's where our data dips. And so I think that would be, the data would support that this kind of movement would be great.
I would guess students probably feel more of a connection with the team process. too.
Very much so.
I would too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Team A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I would agree. I didn't even go to a school which wasn't this way, so I couldn't tell. But it did feel like there was more of a tight niche, I guess, in that area of the school.
You know, one thing we talk about a lot, especially in education today, is relationships. And this is an opportunity to allow the teachers to build relationships, because right now with the time constraints that they have, it's hard. Because they're running from 7:15 to 2:35 or whatever time it is, and this allows for those relationships to be built. And I think they're more important today, and they're going to be more important tomorrow than they ever have been in the public education setting.
So I'd like to start this at the middle school level. Ideally, we would do all secondary schools. I think that would be beneficial for us academic achievement wise. Any other questions about teaming?
How soon would you suggest that we make a decision?
I think that would be nice to do probably by the end of this semester, just so we can do some planning and some PD around what that would look like in the spring, and then post those teacher positions in the spring.
One thing we can do, Mr. Foster, is we can go ahead and put it on the agenda in September as a review item.
Yeah.
So all the board members can hear the same thing that you guys heard today, and we'll have Ashley present that, if that's okay.
Thanks, good.
Sound good to you guys?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, at one of our meetings, we mentioned academic interventionists, and I think it was you that asked, why do we have interventionists in some schools and not in other schools? So I thought it would be helpful to have Bethany kind of do a little overview about title dollars and why we have interventionists in certain buildings and not others.
Could I just ask you to define what an academic interventionist is for those of
Yeah.
us in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have more than just academic interventionists. So we have, they are interventionists, are people that are hired with federal funds. And then they have a specific area of content. So we have behavior interventionists who come in and work with teachers and students in the social emotional learning realm. We have reading interventionists that come in and work specifically with reading. We have ELA, which encompasses language and English and grammar, and then we have math, which focuses on math. The district uses what's called Title II dollars to fund a part-time interventionist or a 0.5 interventionist. We usually refer to them as an RTI. They usually specialize in reading or ELA in every elementary school. So all 14 elementary schools have a 0.5 RTI interventionist funded out of Title II. Then we have what comes in our Title I dollars, and those are for people with that are targeted at risk, typically in a lower socioeconomic status. And those are, it's a per pupil dollar that's allocated to the building. And the building then does a needs assessment, and they determine what they want to use those funds for. They don't have to be used for interventionists. They can be used for parent camp or resources that they might have or might need. You know, they could fund the alarm clocks. You know, it's whatever they want. A lot of our money does go to hire additional interventionists, which is why you see some buildings will have 5 and some buildings might only have 2. Some buildings have behavior interventionists, some buildings don't. It's what the needs of that building encompass, and they do that through meeting with parents, meeting with community members, and then meeting as a staff and kind of determining what do we need to use this for and how do we use those dollars? And then they're using their budget. Sometimes we hire paras, so there might be like a math para or a reading para, and so there's usually an interventionist that helps oversee that person implement some instruction there. And they just pull small groups of kids that have been identified by our diagnostic that are gonna need additional help in those areas. So that's a short Cliff Notes version. Are there any questions?
I thought that may be helpful just when you're out in the community, people are like, oh, they have this over there at this school, but not at our school, and so just to clarify where those resources come from.
And why they're allocated the way they're allocated.
And then last but not least on the agenda, we have the 21-22 assessment results overview that Kendra is going to discuss.
Yep, I'm passing around a graph, so I'll wait until everyone gets one of those so that you can see it. And if there's not quite enough copies, I would ask that some of the district folks that have seen this share.
She said we don't get it.
Look at it on the 20%, see how much we have left. Back out all that other stuff where you know we're not.
Yeah, no, it should really show.
That's better. Teachers are gonna be the ones you want to.
Yep.
Doing it anyway.
For sure.
Not killing two birds.
So what I did so that you could kind of see where we are from an overview is to put several years of data so that you could look at those. The first chart that you see is our percent proficient or above on the Missouri Assessment Program. And in one of those bar charts, that is the St. Joseph School District, so that's English Language Arts. And then you can see that one of those bar charts is the state of Missouri. So I just wanted to let everyone get a frame of reference there. And so you'll notice that the state 2022 assessment line is present, whereas the St. Joseph School District 2022 is not present because those results are embargoed. And we are not allowed to release those publicly. However, the state did release their assessment results, so we can share those with you. So the reason that I did it this way is so that you can kind of see where we were for several years. So it really does start 2017, 2018. As folks here have mentioned today, we had a lot of budget cuts that year. And then we roll into 2019, okay? And then in 2019, we had the budget cuts. You can see the results there. And then we roll into 2020. And you'll notice there's a blank, okay? There's a blank there because we didn't do statewide assessments due to the pandemic that spring. And so you'll notice that when we came back in 2021, that there is definitely an impact, and you can see that impact both at the district level, and you can see that impact at the state level. And you'll notice, just from a cursory glance of both charts in comparison, the fingerprint tends to be the same. And so you'll also notice that for the state 2022 assessments, things in English language arts kind of stabilized across the state. And in fact, only really one area increased in English language arts across the state, and that was in 5th grade. And I can share qualitative information with you. So from a qualitative perspective, without giving you any quantitative figures, the St. Joe School District improved in 3 areas in ELA, while the state only improved in 1. And so we were encouraged by that. At the same time, we're not where we want to be yet when we look at our 10 district comparison set. But I would say that, for example, in grades 3 through 6, we're at about a 4-point spread between ourselves and the state average. So we continue to close in on that gap. And then grades 7 and 8, they're at about a 7-point spread. And that kind of underpins the discussion that we had earlier today in terms of having the ability to team, look at data, and intentionally create instruction as a result of that. And then English 2 has about a 9-point spread between, and these are averages, so don't go and add them and then back calculate. If I've just given you an idea you didn't have, I'm sorry. But really, it's more pronounced in the high school, the difference between ourselves and the state, especially so in our end of course exams. And so then if you want to move down, we'll look at our math. And I would also say nationwide, math was far more impacted by the pandemic than English language arts. And so you can see that the state, as compared to 2021 and 2022, did show improvement. And that's encouraging at a state level, that's encouraging at a national level. And I can tell you qualitatively that the St. Joe School District also improved in all areas in math. And so we're held steady. And so we were pleased to see that. There was new curriculum, there was professional development around that curriculum. And we did see, even in our interim data or our internal data, that there had been an effect as a result of that professional development and the rollout of that curriculum. So we were encouraged by that. I would say that, again, at the 3 through 6 level, there's about a 4-point spread between ourselves and the state. Grades 7 and 8, it's more pronounced, it's about 11 points. And then at the Algebra 1 level, it's about 16 points. And we did a lot of work around Algebra 1 and saw some market improvements last year. So hopefully we'll continue to see that professional learning continue and the effects of the new curriculum there. And we also have the new curriculum that's going to be, that's being implemented this year in English language arts as well. So we expect to see a continued uptick in English language arts. So overall, the statewide assessment from a general sense has been more positive news than negative news as we try to climb back up and close in those learning gaps that happened as a result of the pandemic. And so overall, from, again, a general sense, I think folks are curious, and so that is my response to the curiosity. And I'm happy to take questions that I can answer.
So just as a general, why are you not allowed to put out these statistics for 2022?
It's the state. The state requires that they are embargoed, and so they can do all of their data gymnastics.
Oh, so they
Yeah.
okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and then we also have a whole new set of guidelines this year that are requiring even more gymnastics than normal. So it's going to be a little bit.
Do you know when?
They've told us December, so we're hoping for that. Sometimes it can be earlier, and then sometimes it can be pushed back, but we would really like to see December. So we did get official results last week, and so it could be sooner.
On the bright side, we know where we're at, so we can go ahead and start making some decisions and planning for next year on those areas where we need to. So that's a good thing. Thank you, Kendra.
You bet.
Any other questions about anything we've discussed so far? Okay. I appreciate everyone's time. Like I said in the beginning, I don't know how the structure operated in the past, but I think it's helpful if we can invite some building leadership or even some curriculum advisors or just some people who have thoughts to contribute to the conversation. I think that's helpful and allows you to get to know some of our staff as well. Yep,
I do have a wild question.
sure.
For what reason would the team system not work at a high school level?
That's you, Lara.
I know.
I can tell you at Central alone, that's a lot of kids.
Right.
It'd be a lot of teams.
Well, and you don't have as many, I mean, you'll have so many courses there. Does that make sense? So I'm just trying to,
It would be hard probably to maybe centralize,
I think there would be value at the entry grade level of ninth grade coming in, to
I
be
do
honest
too.
with you.
I do too.
But I think at that, after that juncture, then you'll have so much different pathways, that would be pretty darn challenging. But I think the transitioning times, yes. So I think the freshmen coming in, you're pretty almost, for the most part, solid in what, I mean, there's some variety, but not as much. And that'd be a good transition piece for our ninth graders, to be honest.
It probably would really help or be beneficial in a school like Central because of the number.
Any school.
I mean, all of them, but
Yeah,
in a very large school though too.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen the impact of high schools not having that time to collaborate, even as in teachers. And look at data and look at how they've been planning. And it's clear when you look at the data.
And then even individual kids in high school that have like individual needs, if there's a kid that's on a team where like he needs more math, only he's amazing in like English or something, but like I don't know how you guys would figure that out, and that's why you guys are the experts, I don't know.
Can I go back to one question? This goes back to the first agenda item, and you were talking about some money's being freed up because some positions, social work positions were, is that because you can't find people to fill?
Yeah, unfortunately, what we did is we identified something that mirrors the Career Ladder program, and we called it Closing the Gap. So that was one piece that we brought back. And then the funny thing is the state's funding it again, so that's for another conversation. But then there was 20% of the $20 million or $25 million had to be spent on closing the gap, or had to be spent on educational purposes. So we spent the other 80% on the HVAC systems in the high schools, and then we freed up this. So we had planned to hire 16 attendance interventionists and 8 social workers, and to this point, we've only been able to find 4 or 5 attendance interventionists
Yeah, we have 5
and 4 social workers. But no, we just can't. Nobody out there to apply for them.
So it's not a pay issue or something, it's
I don't
part of
think
the
so.
whole problem that we're seeing, that there's
Yeah,
people
it's just,
wanting-
it's a problem we've identified. Just to give you an example, we had 25 operations positions open here about 7 weeks ago. Now we're down to 8, but it could very well go back to 25. So that's just an area that we identify that, and the pay's not the issue. No, I don't think so. Just finding the people.
So did you have a social worker in every school, or was this
We did
someone
not.
that wrote that were like?
That's what we were trying to do, was put it at more schools, and the unfortunate thing was just.
So that's not the benefit we were talking about, identifying some of those issues that the kids had that a social worker would pick up on. you
Yeah.
know, About not having a charger or having some issues or.
And I will tell you this too, one thing that we are in the process of doing is starting conversations with Missouri Western, because they just put in a new social work program with a master's program. And so we're visiting with them about build your own within the school system and Missouri Western as a partnership, and Elizabeth Chase is working on that right now. So hopefully we can build some grassroots there. Mhm.
Our next academics committee meeting will be on October 11th at 9 a.m. That will normally be the first Tuesday of each month, but a bunch of us are going to be out of town for some professional development that day in October. So October 11th at 9 a.m. will be the next one. If you think of any questions between now and then, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.